There are a lot of reasons why people hated The Legend of Korra Book 2.
You're the worst Avatar ever!
It's not what the experts would call well written. Korra doesn't move past the angsty teen activity she displayed in the previous season. She's once again manipulated by the first fascist to compliment her. It relegates its best side character to comic relief until the last act, and most importantly, the villain is even more two-dimensional than the last, resulting in a final battle between good and evil. It did not save the series from being booted to online only. I think, more than anything, it displays the weeb sensibilities of the show creators, those being a shift toward using the mystical Orient as dressing while the story frames Western culture and values as the evolution of society. The Last Airbender, for comparison, was written with a full writer's room and a cultural consultant. Korra was largely written by show creators Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, with additional writers Josh Hamilton, Tim Hendrick, and Katie Mattia added later. There was no consultant, and needless to say, only white people on staff. The Legend of Korra also moves us into a more modern era, and this image of modernity resembles a much more American setting, Republic City. More specifically, its design is a mishmash of New York, Vancouver, and Shanghai. Orientalism, for clarity, is a term referring to the imitation or depiction of the so-called Eastern world by the self-proclaimed Western world, typically as something exotic and uncivilized. In the 1978 article Orientalism by cultural critic and theorist Edward Said, Said famously defined this concept as a tool by which Europeans generalize the whole of North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. The end goal of this being to other and ultimately depict these regions as inferior. And you can see already in this design concept the potential for a more weeb boy aesthetic to consume the show. Going into the in-universe history of Republic City, we learned that it is former Earth Kingdom land that had been colonized by the Fire Nation. Rather than returning that land to the colonized, they established a neutral city-state where they share. It'd be a complicated process to return the land, relocate Fire Nation citizens, and decide the citizenship of mixed children. But the issue of reparations never even comes up. In fact, less than 100 years later, there seems to be no resentment from either ethnic group. There's also no real discussion about the cultural complexities of the mixed people who are much more prevalent here, even though most of the supporting cast is mixed. And in Season 2, we spend quite a bit of time with more mixed characters, who even talk about their relationships to their airbender dad. So we have this imagined steampunk fantasy city that resembles early 20th century America with some East Asian flair. Founded by the previous Avatar, our beloved Aang, and the reformist Fire Lord Zuko, who should probably have been demilitarizing and amending for his family legacy. Book 2 partially takes us out of Republic City and into the poles as Korra visits her family and learns more about the spirits and the history of the Avatar itself. The show has a chance to start anew, try something really different, and maybe be a little more ambitious. So we are introduced to our new antagonist, Unalaq, chief of the Northern Water Tribe and Korra's uncle. Unalaq arrives stressing the spiritual imbalance of the modern world, citing the increased presence of angry spirits. Further exploring the relationship between humans and the spirit world, read the environment, could be a great addition to the lore. And an antagonist who has a strong connection to the spirits is potential for a good discussion about environmentalism. But, of course, he's not actually some eco-terrorist. It's once again a false interest the villain displays to acquire the power for his real mission, becoming
a dark avatar.
So Unalaq enacts his hostile takeover of the South Pole, reveals his totalitarian ambition, and Korra realizes he is bad. In order to combat Unalaq, Korra must reconnect with the very first Avatar, Avatar 1. This origin story depicts a world where all people lived upon the backs of lion turtles, like the one we previously saw toward the end of Last Airbender. These people occasionally venture into the wilderness, which is populated with spirits who are more than willing to strike first at humans. The lion turtles provide an elemental power which one must relinquish before re-entering the city. However, within Wan's city there is massive inequality, as one family lords over the city while Wan occupies the slum. His solution is to sneak back in with the power of fire. He uses this power to lead a revolt, is caught, and then exiled. He's allowed to keep the power, and as he traverses the spirit world, becomes adept with it. He eventually earns the trust of spirits and lives among them. However, other humans from his slum follow his example and try to forge a new path free from the inequality of the aristocracy. Only rather than live amongst the spirits, they take an aggressive approach. Thus, his old human companions and his old spirit companions engage in conflict, and he struggles to be the bridge between the two worlds. I'm guessing this is fueled by the creator's belief in the overpopulation myth. That there won't be enough resources to go around, even though there clearly is, even just in this cartoon scenario. So we end up with the implication that it is the fault of the poor that the natural world is in danger, because it's only the disgruntled peasants that end up waging war on the spirit realm while the ruling class maintain a balance. But we know that they have a deep-seated fear of the concept of redistribution, so we never hear about Juan's home city again. Essentially, Juan's story is of the first human to live between the two worlds, with his life goal being brokering peace between them, being a bridge. But in this myth, Juan encounters a pair of great spirits locked in eternal conflict, resembling the yin-yang principle, Rava and Vatu. They are described as destined to battle every 10,000 years, with one always growing from the other. But, unlike yin and yang, they are not containing pieces of each other in a philosophical sense. Only physically bound. They are, like a Judeo-Christian God and Satan, the spirit of light and the spirit of darkness. Juan, fooled by Satan's pleas, frees him from his opposite's grasp, allowing him to roam free and become more powerful. They say that he has released chaos into the world, some wording reminiscent of Original Sin or Pandora's Box. As Vatu's power grows, Rava then begins to lose power, and she travels with Juan. Rava is able to hold all the elements and switch Juan's loadout, but only when they bond can she act as a medium so that Juan may wield all four. They eventually, in the big good and evil battle, bond permanently, creating the Avatar cycle. This essentially makes the Avatar an avatar of God, with the spiritual lore shifting away from the vast and mysterious spirits of the wilderness to a corrupting devil and a righteous being of light. Therefore, the unequal distribution of power within the Avatar is justified by their direct link with a heavenly force. Vatu, on the other hand, has only the goal of inflicting an age of darkness. And it's this binary of eternally deifying the role of the Avatar that fucks with the whole show. Henceforth, the idea of balance doesn't have any resemblance to yin and yang. It's more like moderacy.
What did Aman want? Equality for all. Unalaq? He brought back the spirits. And Zahir believed in freedom.
I guess.
The problem was those guys were totally out of balance, and they took their ideologies too far.
And any nuance that could be attributed to the political conflicts is kind of squashed by Korra being the ultimate voice of truth and righteousness. As for Season 2 itself, Unalaq hints at there being more to the story, but we don't ever get that. He just becomes the Dark Avatar, then Korra and him duke it out in kaiju forms. Korra does decide to leave the spirit portals open.
You think what Avatar Juan did was good? Driving almost all the spirits from this world? The Avatar hasn't brought balance, only chaos. You call yourself the bridge between the two worlds, but there shouldn't be a bridge.
Unalaq's ideas were all in service of becoming the Satan vessel.
And together we will become the new Avatar. A dark Avatar.
Know more about what dark spirits could want or what that actually is. And it's not that we can project a belief in superiority over the Inuit people and East Asian peoples onto the creators for the shallow conflict, or that you can absolutely never write non-white characters as a white person. It's just that so many of the missteps demonstrate a lack of care that extends into cultural representation, only to deliver a very flat, very American mythology of heaven and hell.